All right, we look at that report a little bit closely now. Energy expert Mthunzi Luthuli joining us in studio for more on that. Good to have him, Shibe, and thank you very much for your time.
Good evening, and good evening to the listeners.
So let's start firstly at that particular point where we are seeing a close to 24 billion rands loss. And key to what we are hearing is that, one, firstly, this is a legacy of the administration of Andre de Ruyter. This is the period of Andre de Ruyter. Are we to expect that things have changed in this particular administration?
No. Firstly, I don't think that Eskom's problems can be attributable to just Andre de Ruyter. You know, Thabo, if you look at Eskom's performance, if you look at, for instance, I looked at 2008 figures and all the way up to 2022 figures.
Yeah.
Eskom's tariff, the average price of electricity that Eskom has been getting from 2008 to 2022 has risen by 558%. 558%.
But is it cost of electricity?
Cost of electricity. It was in 2008. It was about 19.7 cents per kilowatt hour. At the end of 2022, in March, it was about 129 cents. Now it was 129 cents per kilowatt hour. That's about a 558% increase.
Right.
Now, you can't have such increases. There is no business in the private sector that can afford to increase prices at that rate and still survive in the market. But what's even more disturbing is that despite those increases, Eskom continues to make losses.
Right.
Over and above that, what's happened is Eskom sales in terms of terawatt hours or thousands of gigawatt hours have been decreasing.
Right.
So we're seeing a company whose product is increasing in price, but it's selling less.
Yes.
It's a classical case of a failing company.
Yeah. So let's look at that. It says 188 terawatt hours of electricity were sold.
Yeah.
I believe it should be sitting at 193 terawatt hours.
Yeah. They dropped by, I think, about 12 terawatt hours.
Yeah, so it's about a 5% drop. Do you believe, firstly, that that's the correct reporting? Are they not under-reporting in terms of the drop? And if you look at it and you track it, let's say, over the last 5 years, is this the only time that we have seen such a drop in the terawatt hours?
Okay. So I think that drop is accurate.
Yeah.
I don't think they've misreported that figure. And again, if you track from 2008 up to, the end of the 2022 financial year, Eskom has been selling less electricity by about 1% per year. So it's no surprise that we've got another drop as well reported in this financial year.
Yeah. So a significant drop, but we are saying that there are, of course, other areas that were supposed to have been picking up this loss. So 23 terawatts lost to technical and non-technical losses, but there is 17 terawatt hours that are supposed to be coming from the IPPs. Where are they reflecting here? Hence, I'm asking you the question around whether it makes sense, these kind of numbers, looking at the technical losses, looking at what they're saying they sold, and looking at what we were supposed to be getting from the IPPs.
Yeah. So the reduced sales are basically due to load shedding. So if you if you load shed, you are not selling electricity, which means you sell less. That's the first thing. But Thabo, there are other very serious issues. In fact, Eskom is dying. It's dying a slow death. Some people say it's a fast death. We can argue about the rate at which it's dying, but it's dying. Look, if you add to load shedding the fact that companies now, private companies, are allowed to generate their own electricity, what we call embedded generation, up to 100 megawatts without having to get a license from NERSA, That means what you're going to see is that Eskom, and the municipalities, by the way, will lose sales.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate thing is that those companies are actually Eskom's premium customers. So they will be losing those customers. They are staying with residential customers in the townships who are not very good payers. And so Eskom is going to be hit from all sides.
Yeah.
From a revenue perspective.
Right.
So we will see the sales declining next year and further on.
So you're losing your municipal customer, you're losing the industrial customer, all of them saying we can no longer rely on Eskom. In fact, municipalities are saying we'll find our own way of generating electricity. So they're saying we will never go to you to buy anymore. We'll generate our own and continue to sell. Does that therefore mean Eskom needs to, for example, look at its spending patterns? Because is it continuing to buy more coal while they're producing less, because we had 280 days of rolling blackouts? We are sitting at 202 now, which tells you that we are likely going to repeat that 280 days or even more at this particular point. And so the sales are going to go down. But it seems they are, one, spending on diesel, two, still spending on buying coal.
Yeah, so Eskom's generation costs are generally going up, okay? Whilst the sales are going down and the electricity produced is also going down. So you would know basic arithmetic. It's a company, again, that's dying, okay? I looked at the expenditure on OCGTs, diesel for OCGTs.
Yeah.
It's gone up.
Open gas turbines.
Open gas turbines. Yeah. It's gone up phenomenally, okay? Very expensive. But the other thing, you mentioned IPPs. IPPs are very costly to Eskom because of the type of contracts that they have, okay? They account for roughly about 29% at the moment of Eskom's total generation costs, IPPs. And yet they only contribute about 12% of generation capacity. So that's a big expense. Their cost is not in line with how much they're contributing to generation. And then you've got OCGTs, and those two are pushing up Eskom's generation costs. The coal costs haven't gone up that much. Yeah. So it's mainly the OCGs and the IPPs.
And so a company with operational losses the size that Eskom is looking at, is it likely to come back?
No, I don't think so.
Because they're telling us that it's the last time that they'll be reporting this. Things are supposedly going to look better in 2024, 2025.
They won't. They will be signing up more IPP contracts, which are costly to them, as I say. I've just explained. They will likely, we hope not, but they will likely increase their diesel usage. Eskom and their sales will go down. On the generation side as well, Eskom has been told by the Minister of Finance that they should not build any more generation. So if you're a company and you are being told not to produce the product that is the core of your business, what does that say?
What exactly are you going to be selling?
Yeah, what exactly are you going to be selling?
Yeah.
So Eskom is dying or it's being killed. We can argue about which one it is.
And for what purpose?
And for what purpose. But there's a lot of politics in this. It's a very sad story. Eskom used to be the best electricity utility in the world, and now it's dying and it's being killed.
Are you saying that this entity, for example, one of the things that I'm thinking, I mean, I'm not a business person by a long shot, but cannot be able, for example, to look at these numbers and say one of the things that we must do is control the costs.
Yeah, of course, cost control is important, but generally speaking, parastatals, and not just in South Africa, everywhere in the world, it's worse in some countries than others, but parastatals generally are not known for being good at cost cutting. And the reason is simple. There are no consequences, personal consequences, for the people that work there or manage the entity.
Yeah.
For a private business person, a private business person knows that if they don't cut costs, their company will die, and it's got direct consequences for them. Okay. With parastatals, that's not the case, and therefore people tend to be, they don't worry too much about cost cutting. Instead, they look for increased revenues, which is why I was saying that the average electricity price has increased by 558%. So they keep on looking for more revenues in order to cover their increased costs. And if in fact you look at Eskom's costs over the last 10 to 15 years, they have been going up at a rate that is higher than the average costs in the country.
Energy expert Mthunzi Luthuli with us in the studio, following, of course, that report given by Eskom, posting a loss of close to 24 billion rands. It's double what they did post in the previous financial year. Financials also coming in late at this particular point, and of course indicating 280 days of rolling blackouts being part of the reason, up from 65 days in 2021-2022 financial year. So we are still on cost controls, and one of the things that we always hear when they go and negotiate at NERSA is that they want a cost-reflective tariff. And their costs are going up continually, and they want a tariff to be at that level of their costs going up. Is this sustainable, and is this the answer?
Okay, number one, it's not sustainable. And number two, Eskom keeps using this term, cost-reflective tariffs. What they forget to tell the public is that those costs need to be prudent costs. Yeah, it's not just any costs. So if you waste money on corrupt activities or, costs that could have been avoided, the regulator should not actually factor in those costs as recoverable costs. They shouldn't be recoverable. What I have also been arguing is that when it comes to, because if you look at the formula of how they calculate the required revenue for the utility, in this case Eskom, it's got what they call a revenue asset base, or a regulated asset base, sorry, RAB. The regulated asset base is assets that must be usable and they must be used, okay? Now, if you have an energy availability factor of only 50%, the question is, what is your regulated asset base in that case? So if a power station cost you 100 billion rand to build, but it's only operating at an EAF, an energy availability factor of 50%, should we be using the 100 billion in the calculation of your asset base that you must be remunerated for? The question is, I've been arguing that, in fact, we should be using 50 billion because the public that you're asking to pay is only getting a benefit of the 50% and not the 100 billion.
100 billion.
So far, I think NERSA has been lenient on Eskom when it comes to that. When they start, and I hope they do, when they start actually looking at the numbers in that way, Eskom's increases will be much, much lower.
So the Minister of Electricity was sitting right there where you're sitting, and he says to me, there's no country in the world that will tell you that it's surviving on IPPs. There is no country, he says, in the world. You need baseload. Baseload can either be coal, can either be nuclear, can either be hydrogen gas.
Yeah.
You need baseload. But if you are saying there is a moratorium on building new power stations, where are we going to be getting this baseload?
Okay, so Thabo, IPPs are not only, if you look at IPPs around the world, they're not just renewable IPPs. In fact, renewable IPPs are only a recent feature. Private companies that were operating on an IPP basis, in fact, they're still there all around the world. Many of them were actually baseload IPPs. Yes. So it's possible to have baseload without a state utility. Okay. Yeah, it's possible. It's just that in South Africa, we introduced IPPs at a time when renewables were being introduced, and so most renewables today in South Africa are renewable IPPs. But the minister is correct. You need baseload in any country. There are people who say, no, baseload is a fallacy. Those people don't understand electrical engineering. You need baseload to run a proper, stable power system. So yeah, the minister is right. We have to build. Now, you were asking where are we going to get the baseload
well, I mean,
from.
They're saying there's a moratorium on building new plants.
Yes, yeah. So I am assuming that the department will start issuing bid windows with a baseload IPPs. This is my assumption. Yeah. Well, if they don't do that, then we're going to have a problem.
They're applying for disaster.
Yeah, we're going to have a big
254 billion rands in a bailout. We know that this is going to be given to Eskom over 3 years. Already in August and October, I think they received the first tranche of 40 billion rands. What has it done?
I think that what the minister, if I recall properly, I think the Minister of Finance said they are supposed to use this money to repay the debt. And I think a portion of it has to go towards maintenance, I think. I think those are the conditions. Certainly on the debt side. Now, if you look at Eskom's debt, if you go through the financial report that's just been released now, in the financial year ending now in March 2023, they spent, I think, 39 billion rand on capital cost repayments, and the interest portion of it was 33 billion.
Sure.
So the interest portion is almost equal to the capital repayments.
Yeah.
It's huge. In total, it's about, I think, 72 billion that they paid. So you can see that 40 billion just...
It's gone already.
It's gone already, just on debt repayments.
Sure.
So that's the financial... that's how deep Eskom is.
So even that bailout is unlikely going to save them from this situation.
Yeah, you see, if the government had the money, a clever thing to do would have been to give them all of the 254 billion up front, because then you reduce your interest payments, which are already very high. Yeah. But I suppose, the fiscus doesn't allow that to happen, and so they've got to give it in tranches over a period of 3 years. It will help Eskom, but the debt pile is so huge that, even after they've gotten all of those funds, they will still have more than 200 billion rands worth of debt.
Speaking of the debt pile, municipal debt, the chief financial officer saying is also a big part of the contributing factor to these losses. It's sitting at now 58 billion rands. Others are saying it should have been written off already.
Yeah. Some of us have never understood this problem. Firstly, because the ANC government is in charge, okay? It's in charge of Eskom, but it's also in charge of these municipalities that are not paying. Okay, so why is it that within the same party and within the same government, this matter cannot be resolved? It should have been resolved a long time ago. You know, either they enter into some kind of arrangement or they cancel the debt or whatever. But they have let this problem just continue to fester like a wound. And it looks very ugly in Eskom's financial statements. And it's unnecessary. I think pragmatic discussions should have been held a long time ago, and this thing should have been dealt with. And it keeps rising.
Yeah. Is Eskom a going concern?
Look, the auditors, firstly, this audit is a qualified audit, and they have expressed uncertainty in Eskom's ability to continue functioning as a going concern. So, and if you look at the numbers, as they stand now, and you project going forward, my view is that if Eskom is not already not a going concern, if you know what I mean, certainly a year, 2 years down the line, there won't be a going concern.
Well, saying that on the backdrop of the words, Eskom is too big to fail. It's already been said by government. What would that mean in that instance? Are we likely to see another bailout, which, of course, the opposition parties are saying it should not even be something that is on the table?
Yes, it's true that Eskom is too big to fail. I mean, the consequences for the economy are just dire. So it's something that we cannot allow to happen. That's what they say, you know. But if you look at the actions on the ground and the policies that are being driven, they are going to kill Eskom. So I think they say things that they believe the public wants to hear on the one hand, but they do something else when it comes to policy formulation and policy implementation.
Chief, let's leave it there. Much appreciated. Thank you very much for coming in. Energy expert Mthunzi Luthuli with us in the studio following the report given by Eskom earlier on their financials and the state of the power utility.